So, the off-road Baja world is getting a ton of new vehicles to play with in their sandbox soon. Some that I think are great and others not so much. Well, I'm just gonna stop boring you and I'm just gonna get into it. Now, what do Central American immigrants Kim Jong-un and the Ford Ranger Raptor all have in common? Well, according to the US government, none of them are allowed into the US. This is the new Ford Ranger, and this is the new Ranger Raptor. Now, I know what you're saying. Dude, that's so cool, but we don't get the Ranger Raptor in the States. And while that may have been true about the last gen Raptor, the next gen Raptor will finally be coming to the States. Everyone, hallelujah. The new Ranger Raptor is going to be, in my opinion, the best compact Baja truck on sale today. It's going to be getting the same 3-liter V6 EcoBoost out of the horrendously overpriced Bronco Raptor, and also a lot of suspension components to help make sure that you can tackle the dunes and the flats at 100 without even breaking a sweat. And getting up to 100 should be a breeze because that EcoBoost is expected to be making around 392 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque, with that EcoBoost being paired to the 10-speed that we've all come to know and love. And don't think that this mini Raptor can't get into the technical stuff either, as it has front and rear locking diffs. It has hill descent control and so many assists it would make your head spin. You practically don't even have to do anything. Back to this mini talk though. God forbid you call a guy's truck mini. He would probably throw a fit similar to when a 3-year-old is told they can't get whatever they want. Anyways, you would think that since it's a Ranger, it would be smaller than a standard F-150. And while it's certainly smaller than its Raptor counterpart that sits on 37s, it still has 33-inch off-road tires. Those are beefy tires no matter what way you look at it. And it gets even better, as these Raptors are expected to start at around 45 grand. A steal for what is almost equal on every level to the F-150 Raptor. The new Ranger Raptor is almost certainly top of its class, but if you had to choose a challenger, it would have to be the Colorado ZR2. The new ZR2 is leaps ahead of the last gen in almost every aspect. It has more power, more torque, better transmission, better engine, and so much more. Now, I understand on paper, it may not seem like it really holds a candle to the Ranger, as it has less power at 310 and equal torque at 430, but somehow it's still the same price. However, what it lacks in power, it makes up for in other areas. First, and arguably most importantly, you can option the Desert Boss package, which adds a ton of little goodies and tunes the suspension to handle Baja racing better than a standard ZR2, which in and of itself is already tuned to seriously tackle some dunes. In addition, instead of having a class standard V6, the ZR2 uses a 4-cylinder, which while yes, it may get a little less horsepower, you have less weight over the front axle, which is a massive win in any off-roading scenario, and obviously decreases the overall weight as well, which makes you go faster. Another thing, and this is honestly just personal opinion, but I far prefer the interior of the ZR2 over the Ranger. It just looks like a more comfortable and pleasing place to be, but again, that's just my opinion. Another plus that I think a lot of us can agree on is that the exterior of this thing is just, it's perfect. I'm not saying that the Ranger doesn't look good, because obviously it looks amazing, but this ZR2 looks really good. It gives you that special type of feeling, you know, that front grille paired with those fender flares, it just has me feeling a certain type of way. Speaking of vehicles that got me feeling a certain type of way, this next Baja vehicle is super underrated in my opinion. The Chevy Silverado 1500 in base form, it's a pretty standard truck, you know? However, when the guys and gals in Chevy's Performance Wing got their grimy little hands on this truck, they concocted what I would argue is king compared to the Raptor, and I know that is probably the boldest claim you can make, but please just let me explain. First off, remember when the last gen Raptor came out and they dropped the 6.2 V8 in favor of the 3.5 EcoBoost, and all the truck guys took a break from seeing their secret femboy side pieces and choking down chew to start screaming like banshees about how Ford was dropping the V8 from the Raptor? Well, now those same truck guys can start screaming in joy, as the Silverado ZR2 has a 6.2 V8, specifically the LT1. Now, I have touched on this honestly S-tier engine already in past videos. All you need to know is that if you want a reliable engine for a truck that can do serious dune blasting, this is that engine. Not only that, but the modding capabilities of this engine are endless, and you'll be able to go faster than any TRX or Raptor R with just some simple mods. That's not this truck's only party piece though, because the Baja suspension in this truck is otherworldly. Not only is this truck's suspension obviously tuned to take an absolute beating on the trails, but the shocks are Multimatic DSSV shocks, which for those of you that don't know, I'm going to do a quick TLDR. Essentially, instead of using traditional piston and shims like in every other shock absorber setup, these Multimatic DSSV shocks use spool valves, which essentially make tuning the suspension on these a breeze and much more precise, and means that the suspension can take a much more serious beating compared to any other off-road vehicle in my opinion. To put into picture how special these DSSV shocks are, these types of shocks were so tunable that they were used in the kart series. The Red Bull F1 team used them when they won their 4 world championships with Vettel. Dude, we miss you. Please just come back. And other road cars that have gotten the DSSV treatment include the Ford GT, the Aston Martin Vulcan, and the AMG GTR. This thing is capable of not only going faster than any other Baja truck, but could take a much more serious beating than any other stock off-roader for sale right now. Now, the Ram TRX isn't that new, I know, and everyone said everything that can be said about it. For those of you that live under a rock or have the IQ of a donkey, quick refresher. The TRX is a Ram 1500 with everything beefed up to 11. The frame, suspension, and especially the engine, which is ripped out of the Hellcat. Yeah, it's got that 6.2 Hemi with a blower strapped on it. It's detuned to only 702 horsepower, and that's due to some weird stuff with the intake in regards to filtering out dust that I'm still honestly not 100% sure on. If I had to guess, that's just a marketing ploy, and the reality of it is that they probably couldn't meet emissions with the full 717. I know, that's a crazy idea. The idea that a lifted Ram with a 6.2 supercharged Hemi is not able to meet emissions, but that's just a conspiracy theorist in me. Sorry, I'm gonna get back on track. This truck was SRT's worst kept secret for a couple years, but after it was finally announced, people went ballistic, as at the time its closest competition was the Raptor, which had 450 horsepower, which isn't bad when you compare that to the 702 and the TRX. That 450 was nothing. Now, this TRX does have competition with the recently released Raptor R, and while the Raptor R may be just a little lighter and just barely faster, it does have less horsepower overall, and starts at around $23,000 more than the TRX, making the Ram a much larger steal. In addition, in my opinion, the Ram just has better Baja suspension. Granted, it's obviously not as good as Chevy's, but it's still super good. The Raptor uses Fox suspension while the Ram uses Bilstein, and they're honestly pretty equal. They both have the same travel up front, but in the rear, the Ram beats the Raptor, with the Ram getting 1/10 of an extra inch of travel. In addition, the Ram actually has 5 shock absorbers. Yeah, 5, as opposed to the Raptor's 4. Now, you may be asking, why the odd number? Where are they mounting a 5th shock? Well, the 5th shock absorber is mounted right above the rear diff and provides extra cushioning when hitting those Baja whoops for the rear axle. Now, a quick sidetrack that I just kind of want to put in here. You may have noticed I've made suspension a very major talking point on these trucks. The reason I focus so much on suspension, for those who don't know, is that with all of these trucks, they're marketed as vehicles capable of dominating the dunes. And the Ram and Silverado both bring something unique to the table, with the Silverado's DSSVs and the Ram's 5th absorber. However, the F-150 Raptor doesn't really bring anything extra to the table in its suspension setup compared to the other two. Obviously, over a stock F-150, it's leaps and bounds ahead. Speaking of the new Raptor, I'm going to briefly touch on it. Now, you may be asking, why not give it the spotlight it deserves? Ford basically created the Baja segment when they dropped the 1st-gen Raptor. I want to preface all of what I'm about to say by saying I don't dislike the 3rd-gen Raptor. I'll put it to you this way. If someone offered me the keys to one, I obviously wouldn't say no. It is a very good performance truck, but when compared to the other two, the pricing is outrageous. The 450 horsepower V6 Raptor starts at 76 grand. Keep in mind, the TRX starts at 83, and at this price point, an extra 7 grand won't kill you, especially when that extra 7 grand gets you an extra 250 horsepower. And when you compare it to the Silverado costs 71k, which isn't too much cheaper, but keep in mind it has that legendary suspension. And the Raptor does have more horsepower from factory, but like previously stated, with the Silverado you get the best Baja suspension ever put in any Baja truck ever, and one of the most moddable engines of all time. And if you put that extra 5 grand you save into engine mods, I can guarantee you'll beat the Raptor on horsepower. Again, I want to end by saying I don't hate this new Raptor, and we have to be thankful for Ford and the Raptor itself, as without it, there would be no such thing as any of the trucks on this list. But your name only takes you so far, and the other Baja contenders are much more superior in my opinion. Originally, this was supposed to be a 100 subscriber thank you, but I've been growing so quickly, thanks to you guys, that we are well on the way to 400 subs, and for that, I can't even begin to describe how thankful I am to each and every one of you. I know we've had some discussions and sometimes we don't agree on certain things, but at the end of the day, we're all here because we like cars in some form or another. And to have that type of community with almost 400 people, that is a monumental amount of people. And again, for that, I can't put into words how thankful and grateful I am to each and every one of you.